Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive in today, I want you to do something for me. Take a breath, forget about the 100 things on your to-do list for the next few minutes, and just be here, because what we're about to talk about can genuinely shift how you see yourself and what you're capable of. Whether you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or maybe you're just at the end of your tether with where life has you right now, you're in the right place. Have you ever wondered what separates the people who achieve extraordinary success from those who give up at the first sign of difficulty? What makes some individuals push through seemingly impossible obstacles while others quit when things get uncomfortable? The answer isn't talent, it isn't luck, it isn't even intelligence. The answer is persistence. Napoleon Hill spent over 20 years studying the most successful people of his time: Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and hundreds of others. And he discovered something profound. Every single person who achieved lasting success had one quality in common: they refused to quit. Hill called persistence the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. But it's more than that. Persistence is the difference between dreaming about success and actually achieving it. It's the bridge between wanting something and having it. In this episode, we're diving deep into Napoleon Hill's secret of persistence, the principle that separates winners from quitters. You'll discover why most people quit too soon, how to develop unshakable persistence, and the exact formula that transforms ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why winners never quit and quitters never win. More importantly, you'll have the tools to become the kind of person who persists until they succeed. Your journey to unstoppable persistence starts right now. The harsh reality is this: most people quit, not just once, but repeatedly. They start projects with enthusiasm, hit their first real obstacle, and abandon ship. They set goals in January and forget about them by March. They dream big but act small when things get difficult. But here's what Napoleon Hill discovered: success is not about avoiding failure, it's about outlasting it. Think about this for a moment. Every single thing you use in your daily life, your phone, your car, the electricity in your home, exists because someone refused to quit when things got hard. Every breakthrough in science, every innovation in technology, every medical advance that saves lives happened because someone had the persistence to continue when everyone else would have stopped. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb on his first try. He failed over 1,000 times. When asked about his failures, Edison said something that reveals the mindset of persistent people: "I have not failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that won't work." That's the difference between winners and quitters. Winners see failure as feedback. Quitters see failure as final. But persistence isn't just about historical figures. Look at the modern world around you. Jeff Bezos started Amazon in his garage in 1994. For years, people called it Amazon.bomb because the company wasn't profitable. Investors pulled out. Critics said online retail would never work. Bezos lost millions of dollars during the dot-com crash, but he persisted. Today, Amazon is one of the most valuable companies in the world. Elon Musk nearly went bankrupt multiple times trying to make Tesla and SpaceX work. In 2008, he was so financially stretched that he had to borrow money from friends to pay rent. Tesla was on the verge of bankruptcy. SpaceX had failed 3 rocket launches in a row. Most people would have quit. Musk doubled down. He invested his last personal funds into both companies. That persistence changed the automotive and space industries forever. Netflix started as a DVD by mail service in 1997. When they pitched the idea to Blockbuster in 2000, Blockbuster laughed them out of the room. Netflix was losing money and struggling to find customers. They could have quit and found easier businesses to run. Instead, they persisted through the transition to streaming, through intense competition, through technological challenges. Today, Netflix has over 230 million subscribers worldwide, and Blockbuster is extinct. Do you see the pattern? None of these success stories were overnight victories. They were all wars of attrition, where persistence was the deciding factor. But here's what most people don't understand. Persistence isn't a personality trait you're born with or without. It's a skill you can develop. Napoleon Hill identified the exact formula for building unshakable persistence, and it's simpler than you might think. Napoleon Hill spent decades studying successful people, and he discovered that persistence isn't random. It follows a specific pattern. He identified 4 essential steps that anyone can use to develop the kind of persistence that leads to extraordinary success. Step 1 is definiteness of purpose. You cannot persist towards something vague. You need crystal clear clarity about what you want and why you want it. Hill found that people with definite purposes persist longer because they have something specific to fight for. When Colonel Sanders was 65 years old, he had a definite purpose: to franchise his chicken recipe. That clarity gave him the persistence to face 1009 rejections before someone finally said yes. If his purpose had been vague, "I want to be successful in food," he would have quit after the first few rejections. But his definite purpose kept him going. Step 2 is desire. Not just wanting something, but burning desire. Hill discovered that people persist in direct proportion to the intensity of their desire. Weak desires create weak persistence. Burning desires create unstoppable persistence. When Walt Disney was creating Disneyland, he was told repeatedly that it was impossible. Banks wouldn't lend him money. Experts said families wouldn't travel to an amusement park. But Disney's desire wasn't just to build a theme park. It was to create a place where families could make magical memories together. That burning desire gave him the persistence to overcome every obstacle. Step 3 is faith. This isn't religious faith, though it can include that. This is faith in your ability to achieve your purpose. Hill found that people who believe they will eventually succeed persist longer than those who doubt themselves. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. He could have accepted that rejection as proof he wasn't good enough. Instead, he maintained faith in his ability to become great. That faith gave him the persistence to practice harder than anyone else, to turn rejection into motivation, and to eventually become the greatest basketball player of all time. Step 4 is organized planning. You can't just persist randomly. You need a plan that you can adjust as you learn. Hill discovered that people with organized plans persist more effectively because they always know their next step. When Sarah Blakely was creating Spanx, she didn't just have an idea for better pantyhose. She had an organized plan. She researched manufacturers, studied patent law, learned about retail distribution. When she faced rejections, and she faced many, she didn't quit because she had a plan for what to try next. That organized persistence turned a $5,000 investment into a billion-dollar company. These 4 steps work together to create what Hill called persistence consciousness, a mental state where quitting simply isn't an option. But developing persistence isn't just about following steps. You also have to recognize and defeat the enemies that try to kill your persistence before it can grow strong. Napoleon Hill identified several enemies of persistence that destroy more dreams than all the external obstacles combined. The first enemy is fear. Fear of failure, fear of criticism, fear of looking foolish. Fear whispers that it's safer to quit now than to risk failing later. But here's what Hill discovered. Fear loses its power when you face it repeatedly. Every time you persist through fear, you become a little more fearless. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job for being too emotionally invested in her stories. She could have let that criticism and rejection convince her she wasn't meant for media. Instead, she persisted through the fear of more rejection and became the most influential media personality in the world. The second enemy is doubt. Self-doubt tells you that you're not qualified, not smart enough, not talented enough. It points to all the people who seem more capable than you and asks, "Who do you think you are?" But Hill found that doubt is often just inexperience in disguise. The more you persist, the more evidence you gather of your own capability. Richard Branson has dyslexia and struggled in school. He had every reason to doubt his ability to build a business empire, but he persisted through that doubt and built Virgin into a global brand worth billions. His persistence proved that his initial doubts were wrong. The third enemy is the habit of making excuses. Excuses are seductive because they protect your ego. It's easier to say the timing isn't right, or I don't have enough resources, than to admit you're scared or lazy. Hill discovered that successful people replace excuses with solutions. They ask, "How can I make this work?" instead of "Why won't this work?" When Reed Hastings started Netflix, he had every excuse to quit. The technology was untested. The market was dominated by Blockbuster. Most people thought mailing DVDs was a terrible idea. Instead of making excuses, Hastings found solutions. That persistence created a streaming revolution. The fourth enemy is fatigue, physical fatigue, mental fatigue, emotional fatigue. When you're tired, quitting feels like relief. Hill found that fatigue kills more dreams than actual failure. But persistence isn't about never getting tired. It's about resting and recovering without quitting. It's about taking breaks that restore your energy rather than abandoning your goals. J.K. Rowling was a single mother on welfare when she wrote the first Harry Potter book. She was physically exhausted, emotionally drained, and financially desperate. She could have quit writing to focus on just surviving. Instead, she persisted through the fatigue, writing in cafes while her daughter slept. That persistence created one of the most successful book series in history. Understanding your enemies is the first step to defeating them. But Hill also discovered something else. Persistence follows a predictable timeline. If you know what to expect, you're much more likely to persist through the difficult phases. When you start pursuing any significant goal, you'll go through what Napoleon Hill called the persistence timeline. Understanding this timeline can be the difference between quitting and succeeding. Phase 1 is enthusiasm. This is the honeymoon period when everything feels possible. You're excited about your goal, motivated to take action, and confident about your chances. This phase usually lasts anywhere from a few days to a few months. But enthusiasm alone doesn't create success. In fact, many people mistake enthusiasm for progress and get disappointed when results don't come immediately. Phase 2 is reality. This is when you discover that your goal is harder than you thought. The work is more demanding. Progress is slower. Obstacles appear that you didn't anticipate. This is where most people quit. When Airbnb launched, the founders Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia thought they had a brilliant idea that would take off immediately. Instead, they faced months of rejection. Investors wouldn't fund them. Users wouldn't sign up. They had to sell novelty cereal boxes to avoid bankruptcy. Most entrepreneurs would have quit during this reality phase. Phase 3 is what Hill called the persistence test. This is when everything seems to go wrong at once. You face your biggest obstacles. People criticize your efforts. You question whether you're on the right path. This phase exists to separate the committed from the merely interested. The Airbnb founders persisted through their test. They iterated on their idea. They listened to user feedback. They refused to quit even when things looked hopeless. That persistence turned their struggling startup into a company worth over $100 billion. Phase 4 is breakthrough. This is when your persistence finally pays off. Progress accelerates. Opportunities appear. Success starts to compound. But here's the crucial point. Breakthrough only comes after you've proven your persistence in the previous phases. Phase 5 is momentum. Once you break through, persistence becomes easier because you have evidence that it works. Success builds on success. What once required enormous effort now feels natural. Understanding this timeline helps you persist because you know that difficulty is temporary, but quitting is permanent. When you're in phase 2 or 3, you can remind yourself that breakthrough is coming if you just keep going. But let me share something crucial that Hill discovered. Most people quit just before their breakthrough. They persist through 90% of the journey and then give up right before success arrives. Napoleon Hill told the story of Darby, who found gold in Colorado and then quit digging when the vein disappeared. He sold his equipment to a junk dealer for a few $100s. The junk dealer hired a mining engineer who discovered that Darby had stopped digging just 3 feet from the largest gold vein in Colorado history. 3 feet. That's how close Darby was to massive success when he quit. This happens all the time in modern life. Entrepreneurs quit just before their breakthrough. Students drop out just before mastering difficult subjects. Athletes retire just before their peak performance years. The tragedy isn't that they failed. The tragedy is that they quit when success was within reach. So how do you avoid becoming an Darby? How do you persist when everything tells you to quit? Napoleon Hill discovered several strategies that separate persistent people from quitters. First, persistent people focus on their purpose rather than their problems. When obstacles appear, they don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "How does this move me closer to my purpose?" When Colonel Sanders faced his 1009th rejection, he didn't focus on the rejection. He focused on his purpose, sharing his chicken recipe with the world. That focus gave him the strength to make the 1010th call that changed his life. Second, persistent people measure progress differently. Instead of just looking at final results, they celebrate small improvements. They track learning, not just outcomes. James Dyson created 5,126 prototypes before perfecting his revolutionary vacuum cleaner. He didn't see 5,125 failures. He saw 5,125 steps toward success. Each prototype taught him something new. That perspective kept him persistent when others would have quit. Third, persistent people surround themselves with other persistent people. Hill found that persistence is contagious. When you spend time with people who don't quit, you develop the same mindset. The Wright brothers didn't work alone. They had a small team of persistent individuals who believed in human flight when everyone else thought it was impossible. That supportive environment helped them persist through years of failed experiments. Fourth, persistent people reframe failure as feedback. They don't see setbacks as signs they should quit. They see them as information about what doesn't work, which brings them closer to what does work. When Tim Ferriss was trying to publish The 4-Hour Workweek, he received 26 rejections from publishers. Each rejection taught him something about his pitch or his target audience. He used that feedback to improve his proposal. The 27th publisher said yes, and the book became a bestseller. Fifth, persistent people develop what Hill called definite plans with alternatives. They don't just have one way to achieve their goal. They have multiple strategies so that when one approach fails, they can try another without losing momentum. When Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, the company he founded, he could have quit the technology industry. Instead, he persisted by starting Next and buying Pixar. Those alternative plans kept him in the game until Apple brought him back to lead the greatest corporate turnaround in history. But here's perhaps the most important strategy Hill discovered. Persistent people understand that persistence is a habit, not a feeling. They don't wait to feel motivated. They take action even when they don't feel like it. Stephen King was rejected 30 times before publishing his first novel, Carrie. He didn't feel like writing after each rejection, but he had developed the habit of persistence. He wrote every day, regardless of how he felt. That habit made him one of the most prolific and successful authors in history. This brings us to Napoleon Hill's most famous quote about persistence: "Winners never quit, and quitters never win." Some people think this quote is simplistic or outdated. They argue that sometimes quitting is smart, that persistence can be stubborn, that you should know when to fold. But Hill wasn't talking about blind stubbornness. He was talking about persistence toward your definite purpose. He was saying that if you quit every time things get difficult, you'll never achieve anything significant. Look at any field of human achievement. Medicine. Every life-saving drug or treatment exists because researchers persisted through years of failed experiments. Technology. Every device you use daily exists because inventors persisted through countless prototypes. Sports. Every record broken happened because athletes persisted through pain and setbacks. The principle remains true. Winners never quit on their most important goals, and people who quit on their most important goals never become winners. But let me be clear about what this doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you should never change strategies. It doesn't mean you should never pivot when you learn new information. It doesn't mean you should persist in things that are harmful to your health or relationships. What it means is that when you have a definite purpose, something that truly matters to you, you find ways to achieve it rather than reasons to abandon it. Amazon started as an online bookstore. Jeff Bezos didn't persist in selling only books. He persisted in his purpose of building the Earth's most customer-centric company. That persistence allowed him to evolve from books to everything while staying true to his core purpose. Hill's principle is about persistence toward your purpose, not persistence toward your initial plan. Your methods can change. Your purpose should remain constant. So where does this leave you? How do you apply Napoleon Hill's secret of persistence to your own life? First, get clear on your definite purpose. What do you want to achieve that truly matters to you? Not what others expect, not what seems practical, but what genuinely excites and motivates you. Write it down. Make it specific. Make it compelling. Second, examine your desire. Is it strong enough to fuel persistence through difficult times? If not, either strengthen your desire by connecting more deeply with your why, or choose a different purpose that ignites more passion. Third, build your faith through small wins. Take action toward your purpose every day, even if the actions seem insignificant. Each small success builds evidence that you can achieve bigger successes. Fourth, create your organized plan. Break your purpose into specific, actionable steps. Set deadlines. Create accountability, but remain flexible about the methods while staying committed to the outcome. Fifth, identify your enemies. What fears, doubts, excuses, or sources of fatigue are most likely to make you quit? Develop strategies to overcome each one before they become problems. Sixth, prepare for the persistence timeline. Expect the enthusiasm phase to fade. Prepare for the reality phase to be harder than you think. Anticipate the persistence test to challenge everything you believe about yourself. Remember that breakthrough comes to those who persist through all the earlier phases. Seventh, develop persistence as a daily habit. Don't wait for motivation. Take action toward your purpose every single day, regardless of how you feel. Small, consistent actions compound into extraordinary results. Eighth, surround yourself with persistent people. Read books by people who achieved what you want to achieve. Join communities of people pursuing similar goals. Find mentors who can guide you through the difficult phases. Ninth, reframe every setback as feedback. When things don't go according to plan, ask, what can I learn from this? Rather than, why did this happen to me? Use every failure to improve your approach. 10th, never quit during the low points. Make a commitment to yourself. When you feel like quitting, wait 24 hours before making any decisions. Often, the urge to quit is temporary, but the decision to quit is permanent. Remember Darby and his 3 feet of gold. You never know how close you are to your breakthrough. The next phone call, the next conversation, the next attempt might be the one that changes everything. Napoleon Hill discovered that success isn't about talent, luck, or circumstances. It's about persistence. It's about outlasting the obstacles, or refusing to quit when others would give up. This doesn't mean the journey will be easy. It means the journey will be worth it. Or for a person who has achieved something significant, has faced moments when quitting seemed like the smartest option. What separated them from everyone else wasn't superior ability, it was superior persistence. Your dreams are waiting on the other side of your persistence. Your breakthrough is coming, but only if you refuse to quit. The question isn't whether you'll face obstacles. You will. The question isn't whether you'll feel like quitting. You will. The only question that matters is this: when that moment comes, will you be a winner who refuses to quit, or a quitter who never wins? Napoleon Hill spent decades studying successful people to find the answer to that question. Now you have it too. The choice is yours. But remember, winners never quit, and quitters never win. Your persistence journey starts now. Thanks for investing your time with me today. I truly appreciate it. If this resonated with you, please subscribe, give it a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Until next time, take care and look after yourself.